Well, I had a boat full of walleye gear, but I'm bringing along my bass tackle today. It's my favorite time of year. It's the middle of October, and that only means one thing, smallmouth bass. And when these things start biting in October, they're getting ready for winter just like I am. It's fun for me to go out in October just because the tournament season's over. I get to just go fun fishing. I get to go to a river that I know very well. And once I find these fish, they're gonna be grouped up really, really tight. So the whole key for me today is to figure out exactly what they wanna eat. And for me, it's either bottom bait, something dragged along the bottom, or moving bait, something up off the bottom that's moving. And once I figure that out, I know I'm gonna set the hook a lot. And once I do, then you guys can enjoy the next bite.
Just looking for the next bite, next bite, just looking for the next bite.
Fall fishing is one of the best times of the year for being in the boat. All fish are putting on the feed bag to fatten up for the winter months, but smallmouth bass specifically really start to school. When they group up, they might be a little bit harder to find because they're not as widespread across a body of water. But when you do find them, you can anchor on a school and catch more fish in a shorter period of time than at any other point during the year. Often when they're in such large schools, you can keep casting at them and switching baits in order to get them to bite.
This is so much fun. This time of year, especially in the fall, this is like the time of year when smallmouths start really grouping up. And that's the one thing that I can tell you is that when you get to the fall time of year, it's feast or famine. I mean, these fish are literally stacked up like cordwood. And when you find them, you're in them. You don't even have to move. So if you're not catching fish in the fall, just keep moving until you find that mother lode, and it's crazy how many fish. There's probably, I don't even know, there's probably 100 fish in this school right here, and this is fun.
The next bite is brought to you by Mercury Marine, Go Boldly, Schaefer's Specialized Lubricant, Putting Equipment First, Nitro Boats, Performance Fishing Boats, Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. Your adventure starts here. Berkeley, your fish, our science. And Power Pole, Total Boat Control.
Next bite.
Closed captioning for the next bite is provided by Whitewater, built to brave the waves. In colder water, expect to be using smaller, more finesse-type baits. With smallmouth bass, you often want to have a finesse rig ready to go. But during the fall, they can change from day to day, or even hour to hour.
When you're throwing like jigs and stuff for smallmouth, obviously they're not as, they don't have as big a mouth as a largemouth does. So you want to downsize your jigs a little bit, more of a compact style. And it's going to be a lot easier for you to catch a lot of those fish.
They could be up chasing bait fish off the bottom or down below searching for crayfish. It changes frequently, so being ready to make a change based on the mood of the fish is very important.
When I'm looking for smallies in the fall, I like to concentrate a lot on river systems just because they're more predictable and these fish really school up in the fall on rivers. And what I'm looking for here today is a feeding shelf in between two deep holes. And as you look on the graph here, I'm in about 10, 11 feet of water on the deeper hole, and then it's going to come up here in about 7, 8 feet of water on top of that shelf. And when I side scan it, I'm seeing what's down there. I'm seeing the rocks, I'm seeing the sand. These fish are transitioned on the bottom end of that shelf. That's where they're staging. They're right on the edge of the rocks, letting the food come to them. So it comes over that shallow part down to the deep, and that's where I'm picking them off. The other area I look for too is somewhere that has a deep hole. Deep holes are critical for fish to winter in. But if I can find a steep break near a deep hole and then have a sliver of rocks like you see here on the graph, these fish can now transition from the deep water up to the rocks to feed, go back down when they don't want to feed. So those are the two areas I'm looking for in the fall, and when you find them, they're stacked up. That's a nice one. Nice fat one. Probably should have used the net on this one. Whew. There we go. Typical fall smallmouth. Fat, hungry, swimming everywhere. The funny part is, and I'll talk about this real quick, is that in the fall time, these fish will transition from bottom eating baits to something that's moving or off the bottom, more of a minnow imitator. And when they do this is when the crawfish is what they're after right now. And when the crawfish get to a certain temperature, water temperature, they'll start hibernating. They'll start burrowing in the mud below the rocks and whatnot, and then the smallmouth can't get them anymore. So then they'll transition to more of a bait fish pattern. So you want to really look at that as what time of year are you in. If you're not catching them on the bottom, you need to switch to a moving bait, something like a swim jig or a crankbait, chatterbait, something that's up and off the bottom that's moving. So pretty easy to figure out. If you're not getting them dragging on the bottom, raise your stuff up with moving baits and you'll figure it out really quick.
Total Control, presented by Power Pole. 20 years of trust, evolved from Total Boat Control.
Hey, this is actually a perfect time to talk about trolling motors because I'm swapping from one model to the next here. But I want to talk a little bit about the two different styles because I think it's really important if you're choosing a trolling motor to understand what you can get in the Power Pole lineup. This is the ZR platform right here. It's a scissors mount. It's available all the way up to 60 inches in length. Both of them have titanium shafts, so very, very strong. And you're able with that ZR, the scissors mount, to easily mount an active target transducer on the shaft of the trolling motor. The wires run right up the side, you're all set to go. But there are gonna be some conditions, especially this next tournament, and this is why I'm making a little change here, is where I'm gonna be in some really big water. I need more than a 60-inch shaft so that trolling motor stays in the water no matter how big the waves get. And that's when you're gonna wanna go to the PV. This is the pivot mount move. Everything else is the same. The motor's the same, the bracket is different. So basically I can go, this is a 72-inch right here. And in the new saltwater one, the offshore one that Power Pole makes, can actually go all the way up over 100 inches. Now the beauty about both these motors is all the accessories are the same. The foot pedal is the same. The hand remote, the key fob is the same. And I'm not realistic in the part that I think, yeah, I have both models. But what you need to do is decide on where you fish the most, what type of conditions you fish the most, and you're gonna have a really, really good option with either the ZR or the PV right here. And they're both good for freshwater and saltwater, so something very important as well there too. But the quietness, the strength, and the battery savings that you're gonna get out of this motor are absolutely second to none. Power pole move, check it out.
One of the best parts of fall smallmouth fishing is once you find the fish, there's usually a lot of them.
That's the thing, is I'm just spot locked right here on this spot. And if you don't get bit in a couple, 2-3 casts, just switch up baits.
Anchoring on a transition line where the smallmouth are loaded leads to lots of bait experimenting and sore thumbs. You can often anchor in one spot for over an hour, casting many different baits at both active and inactive fish.
Dark one. Saw him swimming around down there. Oh yes, nice fat one. Get up in here, get up in here. Oh! Try that again with these walleye boats. Ooh, he's hammer that thing. One little chomp and he had it gone. There we go. That's a dandy. Super thick, heavy, 2.5 pounder. This doesn't suck. Talking about the equipment that I'm going to use today to catch these smallmouth. Number one, when I'm throwing a bait caster, the rod size to me is the most versatile rod size is a 7'3" medium heavy fast action. And I use that for just about everything when it comes to bass fishing, especially with jigs, that kind of thing. So 7'3" medium heavy. The line size I use is 17-pound fluorocarbon. Now, you can get away with 15 at times, but it's a little bit not as durable as if you want to say when you're throwing it in the rocks. So 17 is going to give you a little bit more durability. And then I'm just throwing it on a 3/8 ounce finesse jig. That's definitely my go-to setup for my bait casters. Another setup is going to be a Carolina rig that I'm going to use. Kind of important on what you use with this as far as the rod, the line, that kind of thing. This is a 7'2" medium power. So it's got a little more flex in it, so you can actually feed them fish a little bit. And when you set the hook, you get a little bit more flex out of it. And what I like to run is a 17-pound fluorocarbon main line down to a 15-pound fluorocarbon leader. Because if I do get snagged, I only break the leader, I don't break the weight and everything else off. So really short leaders, you know, 1.5 foot at the most, that's all you really need. The tungsten weight I'm using on here is going to be about a 1/2 ounce. That's kind of an all-purpose weight if you're just going to look for one size to get away with. And then of course the last one is going to be my go-to rig. This is the Finesse rig. My usual spinning rod that I use about 90% of the time during the season is a 7-foot medium, paired with 10-pound braid, and then I go to a 10-pound fluorocarbon leader, and this leader is probably 8 feet long, and that's my Ned rig rod. This is a real Finesse, just letting it drag across bottom, but you know, the same rods I use for walleye. So those are basically what I use for rods, reels, line, and you can see we're catching a lot of fish using them. That's a dark one there. Look at the color on this one. That's a big old blackie. It's crazy because I switched up to the swim jig, and literally 2 casts, caught 2 fish, and a nicer one to boot. So just dragging it on the bottom, like 8 feet of water, but not on the bottom, just maybe a 1/2 foot off the bottom. Got a little swim bait on the back of there and just slow rolling that thing across, and just a beautiful 2 3/4 pound smallie. Gotta love it. It's a beautiful fish.
The next bite is brought to you by Mercury Marine. Go boldly. Schaefer's Specialized Lubricant. Putting equipment first. Nitro Boats. Performance Fishing Boats. Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. Your adventure starts here. Berkeley, your fish, our science. Lowrance, the ultimate fishing system. And Power Pole, total boat control. Hot topics, leading information and tackling techniques to make you a better angler. Presented by Mercury.
Today's walleye boats seem to be getting bigger, and I think it's because of their versatility in fishing big bodies of water like the Great Lakes, the Dakota reservoirs. The big lakes in Wisconsin and Minnesota are great examples. Great walleye fishing in those places. The size of the boat's got to go up accordingly to give you safe boating, to be able to fish whenever you want. You're not totally at the mercy of the weather. So with big boats come big engines. This is my 400. It's about 7 feet tall. It's pretty big. 300s are pretty good size. They're all have to be that big to push the boat along at a proper speed. And when you have big engines like that, you've got big lower units, you've got big props, and you've got quite a piece of equipment there. So what I'm trying to do here is give you a tip on how it will save you money over the long run. One of the things that you need to realize with a heavier boat like this is that you have to normally drive at least part way up onto your trailer. Okay, so you'll need to load your boat that way. If you have no flexibility with the back of the boat to be able to raise the engine up, that's where the damage can occur to your prop. So this tip is actually about props. It's about saving your props. If you don't have a hydraulic jack plate that will allow you to raise that engine up, with time, I guarantee you're going to damage your prop. And in many cases, you're stirring up the gravel and even once in a while hitting a rock. And it doesn't take long and your prop will lose all of its performance. So what you want to do is make sure when you're looking at your new rig, or if you have a rig that has like a fixed jack plate on it, then you need to think in terms of going to one where you can raise that motor. Believe me, it's going to save you a lot of money in the long run, and it's going to make your fishing and boating a lot more enjoyable if you're not wrecking your equipment.
We talk about being on the water in the fall all the time simply because the fishing can be so good. But it's important to remember if it's cold on shore, it'll be way colder on the water. The cold wind blowing across even colder open water takes all of the heat out of you quickly. Having the right clothing to keep you warm is crucial. One other huge part of fall fishing is layering, because it can be cold in the mornings and afternoons, but sweatshirt weather midday.
You know, we fish in the elements. When you fish in tournaments and travel all over the place, we have no choice but other than to go out and fish in those crappy conditions and the sun and the hot days, the cold days. But I'm part of whitewater fishing, which they have everything an angler needs to fish all year round, from the warmest days of the summer to the coldest days in the winter. You know, for example, I've got the heated vest on right now, and this thing goes with me almost every day on the water. You get those cool mornings and in a warm afternoon, you just throw this on in the morning and keeps you toasty warm. And we developed this raincoat. This is called the Great Lakes Pro Rain Suit. And this is an uninsulated version, but this is more for your summertime fishing and, you know, late spring, early fall. Super comfortable rain suit. This has got a fabric that's stretchy, so it doesn't bind you when you're bending down to pick up a rod or unhooking a fish, that kind of thing. So this is my go-to suit all year round, you know, when it's not too cold out. But then when it does get cold, we got my favorite piece right here. This is the Great Lakes Pro insulated suit. And I've owned a bunch of insulated suits through the years, you know, just buying them off the rack and trying them out. And I will tell you, this is by far the best suit I've ever worn. Number one is it's super lightweight. When you put this thing on, you don't realize you're wearing an insulated suit. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a fan of being cold out there. I don't like fishing when it's super cold. But when I put this on, this makes my day so much more enjoyable. So You know, with whitewater, we've got everything you can imagine from the summer all the way through the winter. So, you know, check them out. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. Power pole down, says the bass guy. Getting sore hands, not gonna lie. Ugh. Not gonna complain either, because it's only a couple days a year you get to just whack and whack and whack on fish, and just love catching them. Got the old bass thumb going on. It's all good. Got a boat coming by and I don't want them to see it. See you later. Sometimes you just gotta keep those spots to yourself, you know, kind of hide them. I don't care how big they are, they're all fun because they pull hard and they're chunky and they're fat and they're mean this time of year. Peeing all over. But yeah, just a good time is all they are. When you fish walleyes all season, it's nice to switch things up a little bit and just learn another species. It makes you a better fisherman too. I think if you become a multi-species kind of person, like I started fishing muskies when I was young. That was I fished tournaments as a muskie guy, and then I graduated into walleyes and then eventually into bass. But just knowing all these different species and how they react and where they set up and makes you a better angler.